So a quick introduction for myself. I'm the product manager for Admin Studio over at Flexera, as well as our workflow manager and a couple of our other solutions in this application readiness space. But first and foremost, I consider myself a packager. I started packaging apps with Windows 2000, Kickstart and WiseScript days going way back. Went through Windows XP migrations, did contract work around the US for several years, did a few years with Wise as a consultant as well in that space, and then led a packaging team for a major financial company out in the US for 4 or 5 years before coming over to Flexera, doing a number of different roles. So I've been here for a while. But been around the space, used lots of different tools, lots of solutions, lots of technologies, lots of environments, and that's really where my specialty is. So this history probably looks familiar to a few people out there. You know, Windows has been out there. It's been the leading in the client computing space for forever. We've had Windows 2000, went through those projects when those first came out. That was replaced with Windows XP, with Windows 7. Some of you may have been involved with a little bit on the server side, Citrix environments or some RDS environments, packaging a few apps, getting some apps up in that space as well. That's something I did a lot of in one of my last roles there. But for the most part, this has been a linear progression over time. We had one OS, replaced it with another, replaced it with another. There was a little bit of overlap during that, those transition periods. And this is what happened then with our packaging requests. The amount of work we had to do, right? Migrations come up, we get real busy, things get a little quiet for a while. Another migration comes up, another few years of quietness. Another one comes up, keeps us busy for a while. So what's happening next? Some people think maybe we're in a quiet period again. We're waiting around for Windows 10 to show up. What I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, what our customers are telling about, not quite what's really happening. We've entered into a more complex space. We're no longer dealing with these one operating system at a time. All kinds of different things are happening. We've got IT people that went to TechEd a few years ago and all came back with Windows Surface Pros, and they want to use them for work. We're seeing the iPads showing up. VDIs are being deployed more and more frequently on different operating systems than perhaps your desktops are using. The CEOs coming back and saying, I want an iPad, and I need all my apps to be accessible from it. And to do that, we're often using more and more of the Citrix RDS space. So while in the past, we may have used it for a couple apps here and there to power some remote workers or those overseas, it's now really becoming strategic to have more and more desktop apps, client computing apps sitting in the data center for accessibility from all these other different platforms. So again, these tablets, the mobile devices, even the desktops, thin clients, they're all connecting in, accessing apps in many different formats. So from our app request history here, like the stock market, past performance doesn't predict the future. Things are changing. What's happening now? We've got all these different projects coming and going. Maybe we want to move our marketing team to a VDI. We want to move our sales team to iPads. We've got all these projects that are coming. So it's not the big forklift. Let's get the whole company from XP to Windows 7. It's department by department. It's area by area. It's office by office. There's all kinds of work coming down the pipe. Things are getting much more complex. We need a lot more apps coming out there. And so when this app comes in, it used to be, we need this app to work on Windows XP. We need this app to work on Windows 7. Now, we need the app to work on Windows 7 for our desktops, and Windows 8 for our tablets, and perhaps Windows 10 for some VDI implementations coming next year. It's got to work across the board in many different ways. Now, on top of that, there's the Agile Trend, which you heard Bob talk about earlier. We've got this software vendors. It's not just here in the enterprise. Software vendors have been becoming more and more agile as well. Things like Scrum out there. And one of the side effects of that is software is being released more and more frequently. So some of these apps we know come pretty regularly. We know that there's a new version of Java every 2 to 3 months. Chrome, of course, feels like every 4 or 6 hours is a new version of Chrome. They're on a fast schedule there. But other of the major vendors are adopting this as well. I think it was 2011 when Firefox made the switch. Up through 2011, there was on Firefox like 3.6. By the end of 2011, it was Firefox 13. They quickly adopted this agile technology, started releasing things faster and faster and faster. Visual Studio used to release once every 2 to 3 years, mainly around a new time of Windows. Then we started doing about annual schedule. Now they're releasing a major update quarterly. Photoshop, looking at Adobe. It was a pretty regular 2-year cadence for a long time on Photoshop. It's now twice a year, every 6 months, new major version on the Creative Cloud solutions. And of course, Windows itself. Just look at the last few years. We went from Windows 8, 8.1, 8.1 Update 1. 9 was there for about 2 minutes. We got now Windows 10 is showing up. The preview bits are starting to become available. Start taking a look at that as well. So, 2 big things happening. We've got all this complex environment we've got to support. We've got to package apps to work on. Instead of one OS, the app's got to work on 5 or 6 different environments. And no longer can we touch that app once a year. We're now touching it 3 or 4 times a year. It's an exponential growth in the amount of application readiness work that's coming your way. If you haven't seen it yet, it is coming. So what are we going to do about it? We've got to look at our processes. It's really where this comes down to. How are we getting apps ready? Now, the good thing is you just went through one of those big spikes. You went through the Windows 7. You had this huge amount of work come in. So you've probably got a process that's working pretty well for you. And for a lot of people, it looks pretty similar to this. Somehow we identify an app that needs package. For the migration work, maybe it was a project manager out there said, hey, we've got this team or this group, or we ran an inventory report, found these applications. Now with these different things, we're looking at business units. Our marketing, what apps do they have? What do they need? Or just day-to-day run the business. New version of Chrome, it's been 6 hours. Let's go ahead and get that request in the pipe. Then somebody's got to look at this request. Is this something we really want to package? Do we really need it? Is it the latest version? Has it been another 6 hours? Is it current? Is it secure? Have we already packaged other versions, other flavors for different departments? Are there things we can reuse? Because we don't want to go through the next 4 or 5 steps if the work's already been done. So look at things up front, make a decision early whether you really want to move forward. Then, okay, you know you want the app, you know you need it, does it work? Assess the compatibility, make sure it's working it's no longer this one-to-one environment. We can't just say, does it work on Windows 7? Does it work on Windows 7 and Windows 8? And our Server 2012 environment, where it's shared multi-user environments. Look at it across the board. And bring, as well as virtualization formats. Again, we see that a lot in the VDI spaces, in the RDS Centric spaces, a lot stronger presence of app virtualization. It's definitely there on the desktops. It's been there for a while, but very few people are going to VDI and RDS without app virtualization. So does it work in those additional formats that you're supporting? Assess all this, bring this information together, build a plan. How do we get this app through the packaging process? You got to know where it's going to go. You got to know what formats it's going to work with, what environments it's going to work on. Figure out exactly what you're going to do, and then the next steps become a lot easier if you know what your output's going to be. So then the traditional packaging work. Address the issues, package the app, test it, get it through UAT, make sure it works in all these different complex environments. It's going to take longer now if you got support 3 or 4 environments. There's more work there, but it needs done. Same processes. And then get the app ready for deployment. Stage it in System Center, Alterisk, or Landesk, whatever you're using out there. Get that app ready to go. I usually consider the app readiness process complete when the app is staged, not actually deployed, because deployment is an ongoing process. New people get hired, apps get replaced, I got to get my image rebuilt, whatever it is. I consider deployment, the actual deployment of the app, an additional process, but many people still cover that and include it in their packaging processes. All right, so we got a process, we know the process works. How do we expand this process and get this ready to handle the complexity we just talked about a few minutes ago? So when we talk to our customers, we try to kind of put them in buckets of where they are in the process today, how mature they are, how ready they are to handle these complexities. So kind of a level 1, you can package an app. If somebody gives you source media, you can get it into SCCM and you figure out the steps in between, great. Good start. If you're not even there yet, if you're brand new to this space, get into training. That's really the best way to get started with this. We, of course, offer training classes. We've got several partners out there in the hallway as well that offer lots of training. Learn Windows Installer. You got to understand the fundamental technologies. There's a lot in there in the tables. The more you understand it, the better you're going to be at this job. Learn the application virtualization formats. They're coming if you haven't adopted them yet. And they are different. They're different technologies, they're different sets of tools. Learn how they work. You're going to be better. You're going to be better positioned for the new work that's coming your way. Windows itself, as you heard Sammy talk about earlier, the better you understand Windows, It's changing as well. There's new technologies, there's new security processes. All these things impact our applications. Got to understand Windows, keep up with it. I tend to try to get the new Windows certification whenever it comes out. Just the better you understand the technologies that your applications are running on, you're going to be better in this role. So from there, the next level is our kind of standard 2. You know how to package an app. Now what? Let's build standards. Standardization is my favorite word in the packaging space. Got to standardize, standardize, standardize. So in this here, we're talking about from beginning to end, make sure everything is defined, processes are in place, build templates, not only just for the MSI repackaging, but if you're using AppV or ThinApp, build these templates so everything's being built the same way. The more standardized everybody is, the more these processes are in place, the smoother things are going to go, the easier it's going to be to support. If I go on vacation, somebody else can pick up where I left off because we're all working the same way. You're going to be much better positioned. And not just on the templates itself, but build guidelines. Know how to package the app. If the app's putting icons on the desktop, is that something you really want? I know Microsoft's stance is only the user should put something on the desktop. So do we take all those out? If the application's going to put README notes on the start menu, do we want to include that information or pull those things out? It's going to install to the root of C instead of program files. Do we want to allow that, or do we want to redirect our installer to support it? Figure this stuff out early. Come up with these processes, these templates, these guidelines, so everybody's working the same way. It makes it easier when the questions come up, you've already got the answers. It makes it easier to onboard new users as you start growing to deal with the complexity that's coming. You also want to standardize the inputs. Make sure things are coming in the same way. In the past, I've worked with phone calls, emails, Post-it notes, all kinds of ways to request software. I'd come into my desk and find a CD sitting there. I'd have to figure out what that meant. Have a standard process to get work in. Ask all the same questions, so you know the answers up front, how it's going to be packaged, get the application version, get a vendor web page, get the source media, store it all in standard locations. Look at ITIL processes out there for things like the digital media library and ways of storing and tracking this information. Look at workflow solutions like what we offer with our workflow manager. Make sure everything's coming in the same standard method. Much easier tracking, makes it easier to measure your progress and see how things are going. And the same thing on the output. When you hand things off to System Center, Landesk, Altiris, do that the same way. Be consistent. It's going to make sure that your deployment success rate is much higher. If everything's being staged the same way, it makes it easier to support and fix issues if you know how things are supposed to look, they're supposed to work. But we can keep going. So now that you've got these standards in place, and many people may already be at this level. We've got a lot of our customers we talk to feel they're pretty solid level 2. But the next level in this maturity model is to get more and more efficient. And this is when we start being able to really deal with the complexity that's coming. Start implementing automation. Do more with process systems, workflow systems, to help get this through the system from A to Z as quickly and efficiently as possible. The technology is changing. There's as you've been hearing this week, solutions from Flexera as well. There's a lot of automation we can start putting in place to help make this a lot easier. So things we can do, find bottlenecks in the process. Look at your workflows. Look how things work. Find out where the applications are getting stuck. This is a big problem, and I'm going to dive into that in just a minute. But also reduce clicks. You know, if it takes 10 clicks to get from A to Z, let's figure out how we can get that down. Because the less I got to do, the more automation in place. Not only is the work getting done faster, but it's being more standardized. When I can automate simple little tasks, I don't have to worry about them anymore. They're done. They're handled for me. Anybody been in an Admin Studio training class before? A couple hands? Yeah. So one of the things they often show in there is creating a certain standard set of folders. So put your source media in a folder called OEM. Put your package in a folder called Capture. Put your documentation in a folder called Docs. We put together a script that just creates all that for me. So it just pops up, says, what's your app name? It creates the folder, creates the whole folder structure, sets it all up for me. I spent an hour on a script. Now the whole team, because it's standardized, the whole team's benefiting. Everything's done the same way. Everything's stored the same way. It's worth the hour of my time. Put these little automation in place. We do it with our automated application converter, another great solution in the Admin Studio suite of tools, where we'll provide the media that you want to package. We'll power on the virtual machine, bring it to a clean snapshot, copy the media in there, load up the repackager, let you customize it as you need. When we're done, we'll copy the finished package out, store it in the standardized folders where you keep everything, load it in the catalog for testing. I've done 3 clicks, and it's gotten through 6 steps of the process. Start leveraging these solutions. You're going to save time. You're going to be more efficient. Things are going to be more standardized. Works across the board. Now, I mentioned earlier about the identify bottlenecks. Start tracking your processes. Have these solutions in place where we can look at our projects, start determining SLA times, going back to the Scrum conversation. We think it's going to take 12 days, it actually took 19. Let's adopt. Next time we start a project or a group of packages we're working on or one of these smaller migrations like getting marketing to VDI, we'll do a better job assigning our SLA. Because our managers, our business owners, the people that are watching our projects, they want predictability. They want to know if you say it's going to take 15 days, it's going to take 15 days. Don't tell them 12 and deliver 19. Tell them 15 and deliver 15. They'll be much happier. So use this information to constantly adapt, learn your processes, make them better, drill into the different phases of who's working on the application, the different phases, the tasks. All this can be drilled in deeper and deeper and deeper to look into your applications. Where are things getting stuck? If packaging's done on time, or the planning's done on time, rationalization's done on time, but testing is constantly late, let's figure out why. But without things managed, without things tracked, you're not going to see that bottleneck. You're not going to be able to prove that bottleneck without good data behind it. So another example, I like swim lanes. I think this is a great way to look and review processes. So just diving into getting the app ready for deployment, the final stages of packaging. So I've done my manual testing. I've installed the MSI in my virtual machine. Yep, things work. Next, I need to hand it off. I don't consider the package ready till it's ready in SCCM, right? It's got to be ready to go. So I'm going to pick up the phone or use a workflow solution or send an email to the System Center administrator, say, I need this app loaded in our SCCM test environment and deployed out to a test workstation. He goes through those tasks, get things ready, gets it deployed. I can now log on, do the testing I need to make sure that when it's deployed through System Center, it's deployed the same way or it works the same way as when it was done manually. Because now I got different command line options, I've got different permissions being involved, want to validate this end to end. Great, that worked. But of course, my testing's not good enough. I call the System Center guy again, say, hey, I need you to deploy it to another workstation so I can get my UAT testing done. The product owner, the requester, whoever you call it, our subject matter experts, they need to test it in this true state environment. So they go through that step, and then when that testing completes, we're finally ready to promote the application to SCCM production for final delivery. That's when the process ends. So, trick question, where's the bottleneck? Where are things stopping up here? What piece of this process? The second? Any other guesses? Trick question, it's the arrows. It's the handoffs. It's when I take something and give it to somebody else. That's when things stop. Because you know what? Importing the app into System Center, that takes 5 minutes. It's a few clicks, answer a few questions. It's not a big deal. But when I pick up the phone or send an email to the guy, it may take him 4 hours to read that email. It's these gaps. It's these handoffs. Anytime an arrow crosses a swim lane, we have a break in our process. That's what we got to go after. So here, the exact same process, the exact same steps, but a whole lot less crossing the swim lanes. This is a real example. This is what we did with our last team. What we did, all we simply did was we gave our packagers access to the SCCM test environment. Let them start getting in there, give them some basic access. So now they're able to import the app into SCCM. They can deploy it to their own test workstations. They can do their testing. They can deploy it to a UAT environment, get it all staged and ready for the product owners. So the product owner just does their tests and hands it back. So on the last slide, same process, but I crossed swim lanes 5 times. Now I've crossed lanes twice, only 2 pause points. Much more efficient. And then we also implement automation throughout here. So before, I had an SCCM admin log in, answer wizards, go through those clicks to load the app in the System Center. Now, with the packager involved, and they've got access to solutions like Admin Studio, we've got right clicks, send to SCCM. It's automated. And with that automation, we also get our standardization. Every app is loaded the same way in the System Center. And when I load it into System Center test, and I load it in a system center in production, I know it's being done the exact same way because I'm using an automated process. There's no risk of typos. I'm not worrying about the SCCM guy doing some different thing behind the scenes. I'm in control of the process with automation. So much more quick, much more efficient, with streamlining the processes, a few permission changes, and putting in some automation. So that's kind of level 3 conversation, getting these automations in place. But there is a level 4. So level 4, final stage, I promise. Becoming change ready. Being able to deal with the complexity we were talking about back on the first slide. Changes are coming that they may not be there yet. You know, I talked about mobile technologies. Maybe you're not involved with mobile apps yet, but you probably will be. It's coming. The mobile apps, the tablets, the Centric environments, or RDS. VMware, of course, has competing solutions in that space now. There's more and more solutions out there to provide client computing access, devices, to get ready for our users. You've got to be ready. So integrate the processes together, not just the packaging processes, but connect to other solutions like asset management. Let me get in here. Make sure everything's ready, even if you're not using AppV today in Citrix environment, do the testing. Find out if the app works. Get it loaded and ready now, so when somebody calls up and says, hey, we're ready to start doing an AppV project, you've already got the data. It's already tested and ready to go. Test it for RDS now. You may have an RDS environment today with 15 apps, but you don't know which app they're going to want up there next. If you package the app now, and you spend the 10 minutes to adjust a few things for RDS, then 3 months later when somebody says, hey, we need this app in RDS, you say, okay, we're already handled that. It's ready, I just need to deploy it. Compared to treating it as a whole new request, starting over, repackaging it for a second environment, then you've got 2 packages you've got to maintain and patch over time. Do it once, do it right, you're going to save time down the road. And you're ready for those changes that are coming. Start looking at the mobile stuff. I mentioned that earlier. Our view is that 6-step packaging process we talked about up front, it's the same for mobile apps. You guys are already ready for it. Packagers out there, you guys are handling multiple operating systems, multiple devices, multiple formats with AppV and Citrix and ThinApp and all these other technologies. Mobile's just one more. It's one more OS, one more package format. But the process stays the same. People still have to request an app. You still want to make sure, yes, this is a real business app we want to take care of. Still need to review, make sure it conforms with compliance, security testing, look at risks. So before we might test more on the compatibility, we can still do some compatibility testing on mobile, but the bigger concern is often risk. Am I bringing in a mobile application that can do damage to our business? Is it, everybody's got a different definition of risk out there. If I'm at the Pentagon in the US, maybe they don't want cameras roaming around the Pentagon. So apps that access the camera would be considered risky. Or a financial company, they may not want applications that interact with the address book or the calendar. They consider that private. Identify this up front. We've been doing this for years on the desktop side. You know, the great thing about MSI is it's totally transparent. We know everything an MSI is going to do. It's easy to navigate, see what's in there, find out the files and what's being registered, where the shortcuts are. Right now, there's no transparency on the mobile side. But Admin Studio opens that up. So you can start knowing your mobile apps with the same transparency that you've got on your desktop apps. So be ready, because the mobile apps, that wave is coming. And then, of course, the last thing to be change ready is it's not just you guys that have to be ready for change, it's the users. There's a big shift out there in the user-centric computing. I'm sure you've heard that term over and over again at the Microsoft conferences and everywhere else. 1,000 white papers on it. The users want more and more control themselves. We don't have that predictability of knowing when they're going to want an app. Previously, IT was in more control. We said, hey, we want this app, we're going to deploy this app to our users. The shift is happening where the users are now wanting more of a pull. You know, they're used to their mobile apps. If I want to get Link on my iPhone, I just hit the store, click, got the app. In the enterprise, if we want Link, we got a big project where we get it up, ready to go. Takes a few weeks. There's packaging processes, there's deployment processes, and things happen on IT's schedule. That is changing. So I'm going to give another swim lane example. So today, an actual deployment process is a user somehow submits a request. You know, maybe it's a help desk system, maybe it's a phone call, maybe it's an email. I want this app. Somebody funnels that the right way, because we don't want our users calling the SCCM guy directly. That doesn't work well. So somebody out there is funneling that, usually in help desk, to get this request to the right person. And help desk doesn't necessarily know everything about every app in the enterprise. So everything should be getting checked to make sure it's licensed correctly. They don't know if it's freeware, or if it's licensed or expensive, or how many are available. That's not something help desk is doing. So it goes off to somebody in asset management to review the request, make sure, yes, you're allowed to have it. Once that's been approved, then it needs to go out to the deployment guy to create the advertisement and deploy the app. From there, I finally receive my application, and then usually I get a phone call the next day, hey, did you get your app? Okay, I'll close the ticket, and help desk does their thing. Sorry for the help desk people out there. I like to pick on help desk people. So, but that's what they do. So here, 1, 2, 3, 4, we got 5 different handoffs. We go to an app store model, a self-service model, and this changes. User submits a request. The app portal, or our solution, it can open a ticket in a help desk system for tracking purposes, just to have the paper trail. It can check licenses, make sure you've got access to the software. Worst case scenario, you can flag certain apps that need approvals. So it can do a handoff if needed, but it's got the intelligence built into it to know when it needs to do that or not. It's not every request, being unknown, has to go to a SAM person. It's only as needed does it go out for the approval. From there, it can also create the advertisement in SCCM, deploy the app. It actually reaches back to my client, tells me, hey, there's a new app available. And from the time I submitted the request to the time I receive it, 5 minutes, and that's rolling. Now, I'm drawing this as a swim lane here, but this dotted line is because I'm not handing off, I'm not waiting. This is automation in the place. This is a web page. So really, the only handoff, the only time I cross the swim lane is if I need an approval. It's the only stop point. That's why I'm able to get from beginning to end in 5 minutes. So by doing this, we become more ready for these changes that the users want. They're becoming more in demand. They want their apps now. This is a great way of getting there. And it's all done from a very familiar kind of a storefront experience. They can browse the stores, find the applications that you make available. And this is not just System Center either. I'm using System Center as an example, but we can publish, we can set it up so they can request access to security groups to get into like a Citrix application. So Citrix, AppV streaming servers, those are all group policy powered. So this request could just as easily add a user to a security group as it could create an SCCM advertisement. So again, we're putting the user in control. And by doing that, I'm going to go back to this last slide, we're taking the deployment admin out. We're letting the deployment admins focus on infrastructure, focus on big projects where we want to roll out an application to thousands of users. The day-to-day, get one app to one user, that's busy work for this guy. That's a distraction for the big work that the deployment admin's working on. We want them to focus on the big important stuff, keeping the infrastructure running, worrying about the big projects, not the individual one-off things. So I found this slide and I like this. How to be an expert. So I'm going to skip the bottom one for a minute, but a lot of the customers I talk to are kind of here in the beginning. They've gone through the training, they've got a process, it works. They're happy with that. That's great. So now they can do it. The problem here is they're not ready for change. When something comes that's disruptive, they're going to be in trouble. This is going to be an area that's going to hurt when you just have got comfortable in a process and you want to keep doing that process every day. So what I want to challenge you guys to do is to be an expert. Keep pushing yourself. Go back after this conference, look at your processes. Find out what's working, what's not. Start measuring things. Keep pushing yourself. There's constantly better ways to get more efficient with these processes. Get things from A to Z much faster, much more efficiently. And by doing so, you're going to kick ass. That's what this is about. We want you guys to be the best at what you do. We want you to be able to handle the complexity that's coming. And the best way to do that is to keep looking at these processes. Help mature them, get more automation in place, streamline the handoffs, get access to the things that you need access to. You're going to handle this much, much better. And that's what our customers are telling us. This is where they're saying it has been the big benefit for them. We're constantly hearing how Admin Studio is helping them increase their efficiency. They're streamlining their application delivery. The business is happier. They're improving the quality of service. That's what we want. We want, because I've been a packager for a long time, and anyone heard the phrase, blame the packager? If an app breaks, it's usually the packager's fault. That just happens out there. So when we can improve that service quality, that perception, we're not the break point. We want to be the ones that are enabling success in the business, keeping projects on track, on time. This is what we do when we start looking at these processes and getting more and more efficient. Deliver things faster and faster. It's going to pay off. So what I want to leave you is that Flexera is there to help you with this. We're out from the beginning to end, the entire application lifecycle management. We're there to help with workflow solutions to help, again, with that intake, get those requests in up front in a standard ways, implement automation. We can do things like when the request comes in, we can automatically import it into Admin Studio, test the application. So by the time you, the packager, receive that application request, it's already tested and ready for you to start getting into the packaging phase. We can get that automation in place for you. Of course, Admin Studio, been there for 20 years, ready to help you with packaging testing, getting the apps ready for deployment. Again, that integration with Alterisk and System Center to help hand the applications off for deployment. All that's there ready to go. App portals, what I talked about a few minutes ago, with getting the apps ready in that self-service. Start alleviating the users from these one-off individual requests. Let them be more in control with the applications they want. And what I didn't talk too much about, though, today was our FlexNet Manager suite. If you're worried about the asset management side, tracking your licensing from beginning to end throughout this entire process, we're there to help you with that as well. So from that, I just want to say thank you. See if there's any questions that we've got open. All right, well, again, this is session 241. We're out there at the booth. Come talk to us. We can help you with training, with consulting, with solutions to help you with this from end to end. Really appreciate your time today. Enjoy the rest of the conference.